All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
My Hero Academia, Season 5, Episode 18.
All right, so the last episode happened.
Yep.
That was awkward on multiple levels. We had the Endeavor awkwardness comment from NATSUO. We had just Endeavor trying to make something good out of this. And yet he also wasn't really able to do much because this was more of something that Fuyumi was putting on herself. And then we also had the awkwardness of the episode itself just really being really underwhelming in terms of the actual presentation.
Lots of setup in what seemed like it might be a lot of execution. So maybe we'll get that execution this episode. You know, I totally possible.
I think it's mandatory, really.
I think it's desperately hope so.
I absolutely would hold MHA to the standard of following up the drama of the table conversation in this episode. Because if we're going to basically spin it that wasn't a crescendo, that it was more buildup, then we need whatever that crescendo is in this episode or future episodes.
At the very least, we need to see a proper response and reaction from Todoroki to the thing that Deku said, because that was...
Well, he did emotionally react.
Yeah, a little bit, right? Because Shoto is very withdrawn, kind of, ice cold individual, one might say. But this is a sensitive topic, and there had been a lot to dredge things up in that episode. So
and also we need some more actual realized thoughts from Endeavor beyond the I'm going to have flashbacks that I'm thinking about without actually giving internal thoughts on the actual flashbacks themselves. So just triple down, quadruple down on what you did in those 5 minutes of the last episode, in this episode or in the next couple episodes, and we'll be back in a good direction. But we also had someone get let out of prison.
Right. That
Don't know what that is, but
hopefully it's not something that distracts from the Todoroki family conversations.
Yeah. So, y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, then come back here for the discussion. Wow.
All right.
This was a mile step ahead from the previous episode.
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens when you don't have all those flashbacks just cutting in between the ruins of pacing.
It is crazy what happens when you actually start executing on things. And I gotta say, I'm really glad that this episode decided to focus almost exclusively on NATSUO and Endeavor.
NATSUO.
That's the shorthand. His full name is NATSUO.
Oh.
Yeah. They mention it a few times.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But because this is something that's a really sensitive topic, right? And I like how they resolved it, because I was actually starting to get worried, wait, hold on, you're resolving it here already? It's great.
Didn't feel resolved.
Right. Before. It's great that Endeavor saves him and everything, and that's a way for him to not a way for him to show where he's at, but a way that Natsu then sees where he's at, because then that part of Endeavor, of watch me, right? The part that wears his heart on his sleeve is then immediately visible, right? But not ready. Things aren't patched up, or anything like that. There are things that we can do to make this better, and I love that the very thing that was Endeavor's fear is the thing that he faces and says this is actually the way forward, right?
Right. So by addressing the fact that is his greatest fear, and yet it's something that is recurring to him, so that he knows it's something he believes he should do. Right. He does it. And he starts it by saying, okay, I can do something, actually.
Yep.
And he's like, what? Huh? I can't think of anything. And it's not some, final resolution, big thing that's going to change everything. But he just basically says, I'm going to do the thing that scares me, and I'm going to let you all go.
Right.
I'm going to build you out of my own sweat and tears and resources and effort a new home.
Right.
That doesn't have me in it.
And that's a way that you guys can all become a family with Mom again, and then you guys can maybe talk together about
inviting me back if you want to.
If you want to, right?
Yep.
And that truly, until then, even if that time is never, that's okay.
Yep.
You've got this, right? And I will be over here, right? And that is a huge decision. I am very excited to see how that plays out, because there are so many different, questions and fears and dynamics that they could get into when mom ends up coming out of the hospital, right? And they're just being with mom again, but then also with the, hey, how do we talk to mom about dad and all that stuff that happened, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't even get into the stuff of what actually happened with Toya. We know a bit more now that, Endeavor blames himself for Toya's death and NATSUO blames him for Toya's death. But we still don't know, like what the circumstances are for them believing that Toya is dead and all of that stuff,
True.
right? I'm guessing it has to do with probably some kind of burn accident or something, and Zadabi's,
Yes, Dabi is literally a burn victim. That is
Right.
the way his scars and everything
Yep.
have shown this to be, yeah.
Yeah, I get why they didn't show it here, because then it's so that Dabi can have that impassioned, monologue where he goes into excruciating detail about it.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have a little bit more from that from Natsuo, given that seemed to be the thing that, even more so than what happened with Shoto, that he was bothered by. But since this isn't something where Natsuo actually resolved those feelings, it just more of like he acknowledged that they were there, right? And hence the catharsis of the crying scene. I feel like that was a clever way to make it so that wasn't actually needed,
Yeah, it's also something that's just weird to kind of bring up, and it was so... It'd be so weird to bring up that the creator thought it was relevant that the character brings up through Shoto's perspective of, oh, there's no reason for me to bring that stuff up.
Right, and certainly not in front of, Bakugo and Deku or in public or,
Well, yeah, but then that's what was brought up at the table, and then right before they were about to actually have the conversation about it, Endeavor's just like, okay, let's head home.
Right.
She's like, yes. Yeah, that's something that it's family business, and still, even then, it's not even like remotely like even Deku's business, just by being the closest friend to Shoto,
right,
outside of maybe his sister.
And I loved the bit of Fuyumi being like, hey, Deku, thank you for being a friend to Shoto. Because that, like,
he really doesn't have any friends like Deku.
Nope. And while we can say that his his more like quiet sort of cold personality or exterior is a manifestation of his quirk, the personality being aligned with quirk, but it could also just as easily be as a result of the fact that his mother, burned half his face.
I don't think it has anything to do with his quirk. It's
exactly right. It's like with the kind of with the kind of background that he had, it totally makes sense that it would be very difficult for him to have friends, because how do you actually get vulnerable and open up with someone when there's all this baggage and trauma and stuff that is like constantly like at the forefront of your mind,
and that wasn't what was the reason as to why Deku became his friend. Deku intentionally kind of punched his way through that to get to the person of who he was,
right,
and basically listened and was there, and now Deku having come full circle to be there for the moment when the Todoroki family has this little bit of a victory by having Endeavor be so aware of not only his own actions, but the status of his family.
Right.
In that he goes, oh, okay, no, this is potentially the best chance for them all to reunite and rebuild together as a family. Do I need to be there for it? In fact, would it be more helpful for them if I wasn't there? It probably would, especially for my wife, who has not been able to see any of them for, at the same time altogether for a long period of time, or at least not, frequently.
Yeah, and so not in a truly like comfortable environment, right?
Exactly.
Like it isn't a home situation. It's I'm at the hospital and you come visit me.
Yeah, whereas all the kids, they've seen Endeavor,
plenty,
Papa Enji, all this time.
Yep.
So that's a thing that's been their struggle, if you will, is having to basically figure out their own way and how to handle it through just being there. And while they all three have their own specific ways that we know how they're dealing with it, it was really cool to have him come to the mature understanding of, oh, the best way for me to do this in the immediate sense is to give them the space they need to be a family without me, which I got so emotional in the way he phrased the words he did to his son, because some of the choice of words that he used were ones that I wouldn't have come up with.
Oh yeah, especially when he was like, there was a part of me that that thought if I do this, then there's no way he'll ever be able to stand up to me again. Like
if I rescued him,
right. Yeah. It's like, oh God, Like and I feel like that line is really important to have because the person that Endeavor was that did all of those things to his family, he's still the same person. Mm-hmm. He just has grown to the point where he knows that is not something he wants to do, or he's going to choose to not do that, right? But the same kind of logic or thought process or emotions or whatever that took him to those conclusions in the past still does exist, right? It's just hopefully it won't ever go there again, right? Mm-hmm. And he's going to do everything to make sure that it doesn't. But I love that because that's something that isn't exactly necessarily going to do Endeavor any direct favors with NATSUO with regards to I've changed, right? Because he's talking about the ways in which he's still the same.
Yep.
But he's being vulnerable about it, and that's huge, right? Mm-hmm. That's something where it's it won't necessarily help, but if he didn't have any points where he was truly being vulnerable, there would be no chance. So it's
no chance, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much this season needed a scene like this because this is one that was properly built up.
Sure.
I really thought that in some ways, like, we were building up to, last episode. But this is basically the second half that we needed of that scene because that scene was primarily encapsulated within the fact that NATSUO called his dad Endeavor at the dinner table. Basically said, we're not family.
Nope.
You're not my father.
You're just a person that's here.
Yep. Yeah. You are a really influential hero, and thus I will treat you with respect with regards to that. But that's just all you've earned, basically.
Right.
Other than that, we have no real connection.
And in fact, negative connection.
Yeah, exactly. But the way in which Endeavor says things like, I ran away and left you with my responsibility.
Yeah.
Like, that's something where he's like saying, no, I was supposed to take that. I was supposed to hold that flame. That was supposed to be mine.
Yep.
But I let that swirl around and consume all of you. And you were not prepared for that. That was not something that you should have been burdened with, as I was your father, so I might as well have killed your brother and my son.
Yep.
I'm like, that's just so good.
Him saying that really made me want to know what exactly the situation was. Like, I knew that there wasn't any good reason necessarily for the characters to bring it up in this moment, but like just to have for context with that scene and the things that Endeavor says. And then when NATSUO starts to break down and he's like, I'm not like Shoto, I'm not kind, right?
Yeah.
That's there's something in fiction where that I feel like happens quite a bit, especially when it's geared towards a younger audience, because it's the more idealistic, be the hero, all of that stuff, and fight the bad guys and do the good thing and whatnot. But you have no obligation or need to be kind in these situations. Mm-hmm. In fact, there is a strong argument to be made that it is not healthy to be kind in these situations. So I love that NATSUO had this happen where he got to say that because he's dealing with the kind of the shoulds and the black and white sort of morality type stuff of, well, I know that you are my dad, and this is me, like extrapolating a little bit, but I know that you're my dad, so there are these things that I would expect would be good to feel towards you.
Sure.
And in an ideal situation, I would want to feel those things towards you, but because of the things you've done, that's not happening, right? Mm-hmm. How do I reconcile those?
Yeah.
Right? Because if he truly didn't love Endeavor at all, or had never loved Endeavor, there would be no true hurt, right? Mm-hmm. It would just be you're a threat in my life, basically, right?
Yeah, you're basically a source of pain, so or a source of more potential pain. So I'm going to put up some kind of defensive barrier so that you can't be a threat or a continual source of pain.
But it's not just a threat; it's also a betrayal, right? And that's why it's such a problem. Yeah. So I love that this was the dramatic conflict resolution kind of for this 2-episode like arc, right? Because even though the relationship is not resolved, there's still a bunch of work that needs to be done. This was the crux of everything, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't about the stuff with Shoto, even though, you know, it was good for him to get that bit of focus that he did. Mm-hmm. And even for Fuyumi of Endeavor being like, I haven't been fair to you either, right? Like you've been needing to deal with all this stuff, trying to just patch things up. That's not right. You know, you shouldn't have to do that.
Right. That's a burden that basically we all, mm-hmm. and that was kind of a cool kind of little thing there, is that you put it realistically. No one else in the family really wanted to do that, mm-hmm. but they all knew that she did.
Right.
So they all kind of left it to her.
Yep.
Now, what's interesting here is that Endeavor does bring up the point of where he's like, but wait, son, you might be a kind person. Mm-hmm. Because why did you present yourself towards those moments of where you would be there for Fuyumi
yep.
and Shoto?
Right.
Now, there's a part of it that, as the oldest kind of brother in my family, I understand it from the standpoint of he might be wanting to protect them.
Right. Not have his actions cause them harm as well.
Right. But from the standpoint of if he was trying to make it clear to Endeavor, to
sure.
him that he's like, I'm not wanting to give you any hope that this is going to change because you irrevocably damage things. By going back there, he sends a little bit of another message of saying, I'm watching you, which is
you don't just get to have happy times with Fuyumi.
Right, but that's exactly what Shoto kind of said.
Yep.
Now, there's different context here, of course.
Sure.
But the idea that NATSUO wasn't just doing this as like an I'm watching you to make sure that you and Fuyumi aren't creating this new family without me or something like that, or you're going to end up hurting Fuyumi in some way, or Fuyumi, doesn't get manipulated or something like that.
Right.
I think the idea of looking at this from, oh, no, we had family at some point. So if we could have it all go back and the 1 in a million miracle happened where this all was resolved in a way where we could be family again, and you would be okay with that, you would want that. You would. And it's like, the pain of realizing that, like, he might be right. Like, Endeavor might be right here. And yet still it doesn't change the fact that maybe in this moment or in the last few moments with these kinds of interactions, it's still from, like, a percentage standpoint, not even close in the, like, difference of, like, no, this is almost primarily a thing of where, no, I can't pretend to be okay with this.
Yeah.
So the forgiveness angle being something that he's saying, no, I don't want that. And this is something that I think sometimes in anime, I really like when this stuff gets brought up in a more nuanced way, because there's very often the line of, I'll never forgive you.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't think people really know what forgiveness is when they talk about it. And that's why, for me, when people say, I'll never forgive you, I kind of go like, well, yes, that's
your prerogative.
Yeah, that's your thing. Or also just like, well, forgiveness is already a bit of an extreme response. So, there's stuff that's more nuanced in the middle. You don't need to go immediately to the, I'll never do the 2%.
Yeah, I don't know if that was necessarily a good idea either. So don't
exactly.
Forgive.
You don't need to make a big point about how it's like I'll never hate you. It's like
right.
There's things other than hate, or I'll never fall passionately in love with you. It's like there's stuff in the middle, guys. And I think that this is a really cool thing where by him saying no. It's okay if you don't forgive me, because forgiveness in a true sense of what it is a reversal. It is a redemption. It is an act of basically giving someone a second chance, and the second is arbitrary. The number is arbitrary, but the point is basically saying, I will give you another chance. There's aspects of it that is almost so generous in the act of forgiving someone that most people, when you forgive them, do not actually deserve it. That is kind of a bit of the point of forgiveness. So he's saying, no, I don't want you to give me more than I deserve here. I'm here to take responsibility.
Right.
The act of me taking responsibility means that you have to then be okay with, like, letting me be, like, completely separate from this and take an act of atoning, which atoning is a very different thing than forgiveness.
I loved that line where, because okay, it's easy. It would be easy for any character in an Endeavor type situation to want forgiveness. That just means, because who wouldn't, right?
Oh,
like you said, right?
Forgiveness,
true forgiveness is such an amazing thing. And especially when you don't deserve it, it's like, well, yeah. I mean, that'd be great if someone gave me $1 million, right? Like, it's like, sure. But do you actually want the process that makes it so that possibly that could happen and have it actually be a healthy thing, right? Because I don't think it would be healthy for NATSUO in this situation to actually forgive Endeavor here. I don't know if he actually would be able to, right? And he'd just be kidding himself. And that's why him acknowledging it, Endeavor acknowledging that was okay, was so good.
Yep.
So yeah, you want that path of atonement? Go for it.
Yeah,
Go for it.
In some ways, that's a solitary one. What he's basically saying is that, NATSUO, I'm not asking anything of you.
Right.
I don't want you to put yourself out there to be vulnerable for my sake.
Yep.
I will then bleed myself on a path that is my own. And that is something that in certain contexts could be seen as selfish.
Sure.
Because what he's basically saying is, I don't deserve any of you, and thus I cannot connect with any of you through this. But what he is also saying, he's saying, I will guard your hearts, my son, and my sons and my daughter, to make sure that in this path of atonement and stuff, you do not feel like you have any ownership or responsibility for my speed, effort, or pain or struggle on this path. In the religious sense, atonement has very specific connotations that are kind of toxic, actually.
Sure.
And yet, in the strict sense of, trauma here, there's almost no way that Endeavor can atone. Like, not really.
He can walk the path of atonement, but it's not necessarily like he'll reach some destination.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why I loved that decision to have him just be like, no, I'm gonna stay here. In this empty house where all of the shit happened, and I'll build something new for you guys. One of the reasons that I love that so much is it's also a way to him basically say, you wanted me gone, I'll give you what you want.
Yep.
And then it's up to you to decide whether that truly is what you want. Because...
So I think they're going to be happy. I think when Mom comes back, they're going to be really happy.
Right, they're going to be real happy.
Yep.
But I get the sense that there will be some part of them that eventually will be like, I don't know, the house does still feel a little bit empty.
Yeah, it's gonna be a combination of all four of them coming to that realization.
Yep.
Which will take years probably.
Yeah, who knows how long it could take. And for NATSUO, it could totally be something that never ends up happening. He's just like, this is how things should be. Right.
He ends up going on his own thing. He builds his own family.
Sure. But what's awesome about this is that Endeavor is he's being the adult here. He's saying, I will bear the burden and the pain for what I caused, right? That will then basically set you free to truly make the decision. Because since I'm such a source of pain, you won't truly be able to know whether that's what you want or not.
Right.
While I'm here. Yeah. Right? So and God forbid I would hate it if by my own desire to get you back, I make it so that you can never forgive me, so that you can never heal from this stuff like that. So
it's also a really cool, just literal thing in that, like he was saying, is like, when I see your face, I end up remembering. That might have given Endeavor a little bit of the idea of,
so then I'll make it so you don't have to see my face.
Well, no, not just see my face, but imagine what it must be like for Shoto when he goes into that kitchen.
God, yeah.
Like, imagine when he sees that part of the floor, or he sees that teapot or something.
I would not have been surprised.
That has got to be a thing where he's thinking like, oh, I'm going to take all the things that remind them of that thing and basically say, I will bear that. That's mine. Right. I'm going to give you all something now that has nothing to do with anything you've earned or what have you. This is just my way of showing that I am willing to work and fight for you.
And what I'm hoping as a result of this is a specific kind of, future, idea. Mm-hmm. But that when Dabi is like, okay, I think it's time for me to exact vengeance on Endeavor, maybe he doesn't realize that the rest of the family has moved out. So
that's a good point.
So he comes to the house and he's like, all right, and maybe I'll go after the family, right?
Well,
but then Endeavor's the only one there. And it's basically all right, so we're here in this haunted space.
Let's burn it all down in
Let's
a fight.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And
I can totally see it happening.
I just get the feeling if that happened, that would be really awesome.
I don't think necessarily, though, that the confrontation is going to go down, though, in the house.
Yeah,
from a meta standpoint, though, they literally did move all the people without the plot armor. Mm-hmm. Well, no.
Or the people that you wouldn't... The people you would want to have plot armor for... Or
right.
So
the emotional plot armor at the very least, but not necessarily the physical stuff. So have them all be moved out. Mm-hmm. Then if something happens, it's brought down solely upon Endeavor.
Yep.
Because I want to bring up a comparison here that I think is really cool.
Okay.
It doesn't fit that well, but I like it from a standpoint because I love the rule of threes when it comes to a lot of different storytelling things. We had a weird kind of thing brought up about the idea that Endeavor has now been targeted twice. Mm-hmm. And I thought about that from the standpoint of, I guess he kind of has, but...
Makes sense, he's the number one hero.
Yeah, but 2 is such a small number.
Right, 2 isn't a pattern. 3 is a pattern.
3 is a pattern.
Yeah.
But we already know that Dabi is, he's coming. Mm-hmm. Now, the comparison I wanted to make is actually A Christmas Carol. Oh. And we have the ghost of...
Past, present, and future.
Past, present, and future. We had the one of the future who's foretelling the doom that Endeavor will bring.
Okay.
That's the one we tell the least about. And then we have the past, which is the super fan, someone that fell in love with old Endeavor.
Gotcha.
The one that was ruthless, the one that was this bright, arrogant, just flame that consumed all and didn't care, for anyone else. So he's like, please unleash that wrath and fury upon me. Please.
Oh, no. God, and I hated that he was constantly interrupting the quiet scenes.
Yep. I
Stop, please.
Yeah, I like that as well as like a meta thing. I of course hated it in the moment, but just because it made us more attached to the scene as like, stop! Like the cars honking like, ha! I was like, this is like a romantic scene. Like, like, get out of the road! Stop confessing to each other! Just get a room already! But that's for the romantic version of that type of scene. But the third one is the ghost of the present, basically, which is the fact that no, you didn't kill Toya. Well, you did kill Toya.
You killed Toya, and you gave birth to Dabi.
Yeah, you gave birth to Dabi, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple things that we can, infer based on Dabi's design as to what actually happened. But the details are probably going to be better than we could predict. Yep. So rather than making a bunch of predictions about it,
and I get the feeling
it just feels like, okay, we have how many episodes left in the season?
Right.
Plenty to do some kind of Dabi Endeavor confrontation.
And
let's do it.
And the what of what happened, in Toya's past and Dabi's past and all that stuff probably isn't going to be anything like groundbreaking on a fundamental level. It's the impact of the fact that yes, that shit happened, and we're going to see the emotions behind it and all of that stuff.
Exactly. The scary thing is not what happened. Mm-hmm. The scary thing is the fact that this happened and the number one hero did it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, if we think about what Shigaraki's plan is overall, because he's been just looming in the background, doing his own like RPG quest or something or other. That's its own thing, but just the idea that he wants to topple the society as a whole. We lost All Might. Mm-hmm. Endeavor has not been the number one hero for very long. There is
the number two hero might not even be around for very long.
No. But like, think about it. There is no obvious replacement for Endeavor as the number one hero.
Yeah, because Hawks doesn't want it. Like.
That's what I mean. There is no obvious replacement. Mm-hmm. Hawks is not even like, I think, on anyone's like mind as being the number one hero. Endeavor makes sense because of like he has the most like villain criminal busts of any hero ever. Like, it's not an All Might like All Might's numbers in that regard are lower. Like
I think so. All of a sudden it's like, what, you know, like Endeavor dies, Hawks dies, then Best Genist is just like,
no, but like think about it. This story is about how Deku becomes the greatest hero.
Oh,
we need to have our heroes, our great heroes, fall,
so that way the kids can truly be on their own and usher in the new generation, age, all that stuff.
And if we get something to the point of where it's like, like like something like Dabi giving out basically like the final spark, if you will, that ignites the fire that lets all the army of the
Meta Liberation
Front just go all out.
Sure.
The Endeavor thing being like, oh, he's not just what he appears to be. He's not that great. Would actually feel almost like nothing really in comparison. It'd just be like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then we truly get the OP.
Right.
Just pure chaos.
Yep. There was something. Last thing. This is a very, very minor thing, but there were some animation choices that felt a bit different this episode. Some that I wasn't as big of a fan of, but there was one in particular that I want to know what you think about this. Did you notice that the fire from Endeavor was actually casting a glow on him this episode in ways that it didn't in previous ones?
So lighting is what you're talking about.
Yeah, basically. Like it had like this, like it would there was like bits of pink light by his fires. He looked a lot more like vibrant when his fires would be up around his face and everything. And I was curious by that because I was like, okay, maybe this is just like a way that they're like changing things moving forward. But yeah, like yeah, you see it?
Not really.
I mean, in that one, he's pissed, but in the calmer moments, it's a lot more obvious. But I was curious if that was something where it was sort of like maybe like a showing the part of him that that was kind of almost regaining his sort of flesh and blood humanity. Like I feel like that's a bit of a stretch, but like the.
No, I understand like where the how you draw that kind of stuff out of it. But I just think that this show is not produced in that way.
Probably not.
Yeah. I just, yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because at certain points, because Endeavor has a lot of fire around him, it was jarring to me for a bit because, you know, it's like if you're going to do that, then there's going to be light all over him, right?
I think if anything, there were maybe some interesting points where they had like shadows over Endeavor in some interesting ways. But no, Endeavor is probably such a nightmare to animate in general because it's just a constant burning flame of fire that they have to loop the animation on the flames.
Right, or have it like the part where there was one weird cut where it started with him really close, but he was super low like detail because they then zoomed out to see like the bigger scene that had like regular detail, and then he basically had the usual detail for like a background character, but it started on him, which is is a
little weird.
But yeah, I can't imagine what it must be like to need to draw someone who constantly has fire on them.
right.
Which is why I'm glad that, you know, from a character perspective, but also just a visual perspective, that in these quieter moments, Endeavor makes the flames go away around his face.
What was the episode recently in MHA where someone like swooped in and like caught someone like this?
I feel like that's
in
been
an
happening.
Embrace or a hug or something like that. Endeavor's reminded me like exactly of that.
Yeah.
And I want to say it was Deku who did that.
Maybe
I don't
know.
remember, but it was like season 4 or something or something a while before this. I just remember the and like slides in and catches him. But in this case, it was the humongous, massive, like, hulked out hero man comes in and gently embraces and hugs his son.
You okay?
And it's just like, that stuff gets me, man.
And
gets me.
And then the bit of comedy that's also in that of him also hugging Bakugo because Bakugo saved his son, but Bakugo's just like, no,
I'm fine.
Yeah. What's the recipe for the tofu?
Yeah, Bakugo was legitimately funny this episode.
And that's something that isn't common for him, I feel like.
But I also liked how he kind of knew to shut up once he realized that, yes, this victory wasn't something that we got there. Deku, what about the mob? If you mean that everyone who's in the cars, they're fine.
But then the smug face when he's like, "Oh yeah, we got the villain."
Yeah, exactly. And we were faster than you.
Right.
You think it took us all winter to do that? And then he starts rubbing it in, and he's like, "Yeah, no. You did great. You covered my mistake as quickly as possible."
Yeah, it's like, and it's again something where Bakugo's kind of getting cock-blocked because it's the person wasn't functioning properly because of an emotional situation.
So it wasn't a real win.
So, yeah.
But yeah, okay.
All right.
And Deku used Black Whip in a way
very effectively. I kind of, I mean this in the best possible way. Or just to be upfront about it, I kind of didn't buy it. Like I know he did some training, but that went very quickly to like.
Well, there was a bit of a time skip kind of training.
I guess, yeah.
The main thing was all three of them used the advice that Endeavor gave them about how to multitask their powers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And Todoroki did that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bakugo did a more focused form of how he would basically contain the entire blast of his explosions in like singular little points so that he could go faster.
Well, to go faster and then also probably to rescue a hostage that's being bound and breaking the bonds without hurting the hostage.
Yeah, that's a good point. Bakugo actually was the one that directly saved Natsuo. Mm-hmm. So let's just keep that in mind.
Because hostage situations are real messy.
Well, right. But just to bring up the point that Todoroki couldn't have done it, not with his quirk. His quirk doesn't make sense to have been able to do that.
Yeah,
Deku is not actually fast enough to do it.
Right, and punching, like, that's not probably the most effective for breaking.
No. He can do things other than punch. I'm talking about the fact of speed, of actual grabbing him from the whipped, like, painted lines and stuff, and getting him out from in front of the moving train. That is something that Deku could not have done. But Bakugo could have because he's just actually faster than Deku in those states.
That's right. I forgot that the guy was going to use the train to kill him.
Yeah. So he threw up the cars, threw Natsuo over here, all to get them away from him.
Which goes to show, it's again, thankfully, it was just the one hostage. Because he can't if he directly kills the hostage, he won't.
Essentially.
Well, sure. Yeah, but, it's the whole thing of if you directly kill the hostage, then you don't have a bargaining chip anymore. But,
yeah. So that was why he did the thing with the cars. Yeah.
Yep.
But, y'all, I'm so glad this episode went this way. I cannot tell you how much of a relief this was compared to the previous episode.
Yes, absolutely.
I was really thinking that...
it was like, oh no, please don't tell me that...
This is a bad sign.
Right, yeah.
And this episode gave us so much there in that regard. So.
And I still think that it probably could have been condensed maybe into one episode, but...
Oh, no.
What we got
really good. I think it should have been... The stuff in the previous episode?
Yeah.
No. That should have been just a longer episode. The stuff at the dinner and the room and like just them.
Sure, that would definitely be better.
That should have been a longer episode. I do not agree about it being all condensed into one episode. Make that episode longer.
Add more content.
Take out like 80% of the flashbacks that weren't necessary to show.
And I'm sorry, people who love the power increasing and training of our boys.
Yeah, that stuff too.
But
chuck it.
Yeet.
No. And then just have this one maybe like...
Yeah, I love the fact that this one focused entirely on Natsuo. That was really good.
Yeah. Maybe in this episode, I liked the driver.
The driver was fun. Yeah.
And sounds.
Right.
Brought me back to my Tintin days. I was like, oh my God, I love this guy.
And he actually was busting out some pretty good driving moves.
He drove in a specific way so that the back or the front of the car would get hit so it wouldn't hurt the kids as much.
And then
he
spun it around
to shift momentum so that Endeavor could jump out of the passenger seat.
Right.
Then, once the kids all jump out, when they're all like stuck in this thing of, I think it was ice at that point because Todoroki needed to save them from actually getting hurt.
Oh, okay.
Then he's like, oh, you forgot this, and he launches their stuff out of the trunk.
Right.
I'm like, Albert?
Yeah,
like Alfred?
Who is this guy?
You? This is Alfred from like Batman, basically.
The real secret behind the Endeavor Agency, doing so well.
Is Mr. Zounds.
Exactly.
And calling Bakugo Mr. High School, I'm sorry, it's not good enough for you. And I was just like, wait, thank you so much. I don't know why it got me so good. But anyhow, y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the full-length timer version of the reaction, go check out the link in the description below. For our Patreon, you can get an early access. Any level support that gets you access to our Discord, where you can chat with us and the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
We stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all
next time.